So on the 17th of July 2024, we had the new Labour government's first King's Speech. And what was surprising about this King's Speech is that there was actually a new pension schemes bill mentioned. So I've had a look at the King's Speech briefing notes, which give a bit more detail about each of the draft bills included in the speech, and in particular this pension schemes bill. And I've also had a look at what Labour ministers have said since. So in this video, I'm going to share with you what's coming down the tracks in terms of what Labour wants to do with your pensions. I'm Carl. I'm a chartered financial planner and investment manager. Welcome to the channel. In these videos, I'm not providing advice, but just guidance in topics such as financial planning, retirement planning, pensions, investments, and taxation. Now, before we start, I must say that many of the measures talked about in this new pensions schemes bill are measures that were put forward by the previous Conservative government, but Labour have said they plan to take these on and go even further. If you want to read more about the Conservatives' thought process on this originally, you can read Jeremy Hunt's Mansion House reforms. So in this King's Speech briefing notes, the pension schemes bill is listed as the third bill mentioned, just behind the Budget Responsibility Bill and the National Welfare Fund bill. There are over 35 bills mentioned in the King's Speech. So can we read into this that if the pension schemes bill is number 3 on the list, it is very important to this Labour government. So the overall aim of this new pension schemes bill is apparently to increase the amount available for pension savers and could help an average earner who saves over their lifetime in a defined contribution scheme to have over £11,000 more in their pension pots with which to secure their retirement income. Now, there is already lots to unpack on this overview statement for the bill and lots wrong with it. Firstly, governments cannot control what the end result is going to be inside your pension. There are two things that will determine the size of your pension pot when you come to retire. Firstly, the amount you have saved into the pension, and then secondly, the returns your underlying investment has achieved. Governments don't control where investment fund managers invest yet. It's actually really misleading to communicate that government meddling is somehow going to produce a bigger retirement pot. And if you are going to say you're going to produce a bigger retirement pot, you would have thought they would have used a higher number than the £11,000 figure that they've used. So in this overview statement, they also use the word secure their retirement income, which means that the government still believe that most people are going to purchase an annuity with their pension once they come to retire, which when you look at the figures nowadays, that's just not the case. Far more people are utilising flexible drawdown rather than buying an annuity. So if we look at what an extra £11,000 pension pot buys you in terms of an annuity at today's rates, for a 65-year-old who wants an inflation indexed linked annuity, the extra £11,000 will only secure you an extra £40 a month in retirement. Now, this is hardly a game changer in terms of retirement income. However, a better aim for any government would be to educate pension savers to save more and invest into a globally diversified equity portfolio. Now, according to the Office for National Statistics, the gross median average wage in the UK is currently £34,963 a year. Now, if the average earner in the UK contributed 10% of their gross salary per year into a pension on a monthly basis, then because they were uneducated in how stock markets worked, they invested their monthly contributions into a cautious fund because they were concerned about stock market risk and they wanted to have more security with their pension funds. Then based on the fund sector average, for a cautious fund, they would have produced a pension pot of around £160,673 over the last 30 years. However, had the same person invested their monthly pension contributions into a global equity fund, they would have produced a pension pot of around £590,021 over the same period. That's a £429,348 difference, much bigger than the piddly £11,000 that the government says it will be able to increase your pot by. All pension savers needed to do in that example I've just shown you was invest their pension the right way, make their pension contributions and benefit from the wonders of pound cost averaging and leave it all alone. No government meddling was required. So one of the first points in the King's Speech briefing notes in relation to the new pension schemes bill states that the government plans to consolidate small deferred individual pension pots. So what this means is pension pots that are no longer being paid into. So perhaps you've got some smaller pensions that you've built up from previous jobs that you no longer work for. So whilst it's generally a good thing to consolidate pension pots into one, to make the administration easier, to benefit from lower charging, and make the investment strategy easier to manage, some caution is needed here. Many older style pension schemes have additional generous benefits that are not available with today's modern schemes. And these benefits may be lost if pensions are transferred. So for example, some of these older schemes offer a higher amount of tax-free cash than today's 25%. Some offer a guaranteed annuity rate when it comes to retirement, which can be a lot higher than what's available on the open market. And some even offer guaranteed return rates or bonus rates until your retirement. So how is the government going to ensure that these pensions are reviewed properly and checked before being consolidated? Also, where is this consolidation going to take place? Which pension will the smaller pension pots go into? I assume it will be the government-backed Nest scheme, which has far more limited investment opportunities than, say, a self-invested personal pension. Next in the briefing notes, it mentions a new value for money framework, where the aim will be to force pension providers to show that they're providing value for money. And it looks like this is going to be policed by the Financial Conduct Authority and will focus on investment performance as well as charges. Now, something similar has been in place for investment fund managers for a little while now. And having experience in this area as with running an investment fund, I can say that it just causes a lot of extra red tape, compliance costs, and the industry ends up marking its own homework, with little value to the end investors. I would argue if you look for it, there is already some great value in the pension market. You can set up your own pension and administer it yourself for around 0.15% per year. And you can also find a global equity tracking fund for around 0.10% per year. So I already believe that's fantastic value when considering the life-changing wealth a pension can help you build. A further worrying statement in the briefing notes was around pension providers being forced to offer a retirement income solution. Now, to me, this sounds like further control from the government and pension providers telling you what to do when you come to take your money out of your pension in retirement. We've had something similar in place for pension savers for a few years now, called lifestyle funds or target date retirement funds. And the aim of these funds has always been to manage your retirement journey. So if you're younger and there's a number of years to go until retirement, you'll generally be invested in a much larger proportion of shares or equities. And then as you get closer to your nominated retirement date, the fund will automatically take you out of shares and move you into bond investments with the aim of supposedly securing your retirement. But the problem with these funds is that when you get to retirement, it's likely you're going to spend around 30 plus years in retirement, and you're going to need inflation-beating returns to provide you with a growing income in retirement. Otherwise, your income's just going to run out because your pension's going to run out before you do. And also, these bonds and de-risking your pension are not low risk as you approach retirement. Just look at what happened to some of these funds after the Liz Truss mini budget debacle. Some of these funds fell off a cliff and wrecked many people's retirement. The government and the pension industry do not have a good track record of designing investment products. So defined benefit pensions, also known as final salary pensions, were also mentioned in the briefing notes. And the plan here is again to consolidate schemes together into one super scheme, particularly if employers of these schemes are go insolvent or are struggling to fund them. So this sounds like good news for those in schemes that are poorly funded, but not necessarily good news for the schemes that are well funded, who are going to have to bring these schemes into their own fund. And there's been further talk since of merging all of the local government pension schemes. Now, we've heard it spoken a lot by Labour that their big theme is around growing the economy. And their big theme for pensions is to get your pension money invested into the UK more. They want your pension money to invest into UK infrastructure, their green agenda, and private equity markets. They believe that greater returns can come from investments in the private market. And we've already started to see this with the new Legal and General Private Markets Access Fund. But the problem with private equity investing is that the market is illiquid. There's no readily, easily way to sell your shares in a market if they're privately held shares. So providers like Legal & General think they found the solution through long-term asset funds, but these funds have yet to be tested in an extreme liquidity case. If, for example, if everyone wanted their money back at the same time, how would they release money from all of these privately held shares? The nearest thing we've had in the past is property funds that are open-ended investment companies investing in direct property, so large commercial buildings, offices. And when these funds have been tested, when there's been a big call for liquidity, investors wanting their money back, these funds have had to suspend for months and months at a time, because you can't all of a sudden sell bits of property quickly and give money back to investors. And this was also part of the problem for the famous Neil Woodford Equity Income Fund. He held too much in private markets, so that when people wanted their money back, he couldn't give it back to them quick enough, and the fund had to suspend. On the plus side, there was no mention in the King's Speech briefing notes around the pension annual allowance, the lifetime allowance, or any changes to income tax relief for pension contributions. A pension review task force has now been set up by the government, so we will need to follow this closely to see what else is going to be recommended. We expect a first draft of the review before the first budget from the new Chancellor in the autumn. Although we have found out a lot more now on Labour's plans for your pensions, there is still a lot more detail to come. So if you want to keep up to date what's happening with pensions and Labour, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can sign up to my monthly email and also follow me on X. So what I suggest you do at the moment in preparation for all of this is to review the pensions you currently have with a view to potentially consolidating them into a pension pot that you choose before it's chosen for you. You might want to consider consolidating them into a self-invested personal pension, because that is going to offer you the greatest investment choice and also the most flexibility when the time comes to you wanting withdraw money out of your pension. Obviously, before you do any pension transfers, do remember to check for any benefits that we discussed earlier in terms of higher tax-free cash, guaranteed income, guaranteed bonus rates, those sorts of things. Don't do any transfers until you've had a good look through everything. And of course, if you're unsure in this area, do seek professional advice. Now, it will be unlikely you'll be able to transfer your current workplace pension scheme, because that will be receiving valuable employer contributions. If you were to transfer it, those employer contributions would most likely stop. But it is worth checking if your current workplace pension scheme will allow what's called a partial transfer, because you might be able to partially transfer the majority of your funds out into a pension of your choice, leaving some funds still in the scheme, which keeps it open and allows you to continue receiving employer contributions. Now, of course, the biggest decision you need to make when it comes to your pensions is the underlying investment strategy. Now, I've always said the best thing to do for long-term results, and remember that this includes your actual retirement period, because you might be in retirement for 30 plus years, is to seek a global investment strategy, a globally diversified investment strategy. And you also need to consider your pensions as part of an overall investment strategy with other assets you have, and think of being more diversified from a protection point of view. So as well as owning shares in large global companies, you need to consider property, you need to consider physical gold. And if you have the right attitude to risk and you can cope with the volatility, you might even want to consider a little bit of cryptocurrency. These are all ways that you can try and avoid the government having more control over your money. If you leave everything as it is currently, it's likely that your pension is going to be chosen for you, and potentially even the investment strategy is going to be chosen for you, and it's going to include a large allocation to UK companies and potentially even private markets. It feels like the government wants more control over your pension funds because there's so much money in pension funds. So you might want to consider ways you can take away this control and ensure that you remain in charge of your own money. I hope you found this video useful. If you have found some value, please give it a like and add any comments that you think might be interesting. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Until next time, take care.